Hello, it's Keith here, and this is day 2 of the Grime 6502 project. And so what's been going on over the last 24 hours? Well, I'll tell you. Now, the most important thing, as you can probably see on the screen, is we've got the Grime 6502 logo. So we've changed the Grime Z80 logo, and now it's Grime 6502. So that's much nicer. At least I'll remember the name of the project when I introduce the videos now. So what else has happened? Well, also, you can see the NES version here. It has got colour this time, but if we just close it and rerun it, we'll see it's much faster as well. And that's because I've rewritten a interrupt-based drawing routine, because last time I was manually waiting for the screen refresh because we can only access the video memory during screen refresh. But now I'm using a buffer and I'm dumping all of that straight to the screen memory during that refresh automatically in an interrupt. So that's working much better. Really, I need to do the same for the SNES as well. The SNES is a bit slow. Really, the SNES version hasn't changed since yesterday, but I do need to do that at some point. But to be honest, even at the moment, the SNES version isn't really slower than some of the other 8-bit systems. So it's not a major priority at this time. So let's have a look at all the systems then. So let's start at the top with the Atari 5200. Tiny little screen there. Now, not much has changed on this one. The only thing I've really done is I've centralized the screen. I'm only using a 32 tile by 24 tile screen on all the systems, and some of the systems have larger screens than that. So I've just repositioned the virtual screen a little bit on that system to make it a little neater. We'll just prove it does work on the Atari 800 as well. Yes, it does. So there we go. I'm not counting that as a separate system. They really are identical. The Apple II. I have had to do some work on this. If you remember yesterday, the tiles were different colours at alternate lines. And as I said, that was an artifact of the screen system. So what I've done now is I've actually exported 2 versions of each tile so that the colours work correctly. Now, my sprite editor here exports these half-resolution colours correctly for the screen, so the sprite editor is effectively outputting the bits in the correct format for the colours to match. Now, there's a few discrepancies still. You notice this one looks darker than this one, but as far as I know, that's just the way that the screen works with different combinations of pixels. It's quite complex, and I'm going to cover it later in my tutorials. But anyway, I think that's now working as well as we can make it at this point without a bit of artistic work on these sprites, because of course these horrible things are just placeholders. I will make a nicer job of them in the end. So the BBC, Grime 6502, not too many changes there. The Commodore 64. Now the Commodore 64, if you remember yesterday, there were colour problems on it. I've now done proper colours, so we can see we've got nice colours, and there's no glitching on the screen anymore. I've centred it as well. It's a little bit slow though, so I can improve that. At the moment I'm using fairly generic code copied straight from my tutorials, but when things get to a later point I can write very specific code with no extra wastage, because it's very generic for all of the bitmap systems at the moment, but I can write pure C64 code that will be much faster later if I have time. Now, one thing that is worth noting, I'm planning to move to cartridges for a couple of my systems. I've got 2 options from my build here, C64 and C64 CRT. Now, it's not too bad on the C64, but the VIC-20 it's very important on. I'm going to discuss that as well later. But at the moment, it works fine on both as a program or a CRT cartridge. Atari links. Still off-center there, but no matter. I can fix that. The NES we've already seen, working very nicely now. PC Engine. I've done some centering on that. The colours are still wrong. Need to look into that. I don't know why that is. Not a major problem, obviously. Super Nintendo, well, we've already seen that. It works just fine. Now, I can no longer run it as a PRG, so I'm going to run it as a ROM file now, as a cartridge. And there we go, off-center, but again, we can fix that. It's not a major problem. Now, why am I having to run it as a cartridge? Well, the major change that you can't really see today and yesterday is, as I said yesterday, I was just dumping the raw data of the picture straight to the screen. I'm not doing that today. Today we're using a proper 2-buffer TileMap in the exact same way as Grime Z80 did. So I've had to allocate memory for that TileMap. Now the TileMap is 768 bytes, and there's 2 of them, one for the last frame and one for the current frame. Now on a system like the Nintendo NES and on the VIC-20, that causes a major problem. The VIC-20's only got 4 kilobytes of memory and the NES has only got 2 kilobytes, and I need over 1 kilobyte just for these TileMaps. So with the NES especially, I'm having to use an extra kilobyte of memory just for the backup of the screen memory. Now in theory I could merge one of those TileMap backups with the screen memory, but it would mean some restructuring, and at the moment I don't want to do that. But anyway, because of the VIC-20's got so little memory, loading the program into RAM isn't going to be really very easy. So what I'm doing is I'm now making the program as a ROM cartridge and running it from there, and that's going to work just fine because Grime Z80 was designed to run from ROM for the start because it was designed for the Game Boy and things. So that's not going to be a problem. Now, I couldn't run the cartridge version yesterday because although I had a VIC-20 header that was loading okay, I couldn't see anything on the screen, and it turned out I need to initialize the screen correctly because the system firmware no longer exists. It's not doing anything like that. So I just had to make a few changes there, but now it's working fine. And that's really good because a computer with just 4 kilobytes of memory is a pretty poor computer, but a cartridge system with 4 kilobytes of memory is a pretty good cartridge system. So it turns the VIC-20 from a bad system to a fairly decent one, really. I mean, the screen size is actually around the same size as the Lynx, I think. So, you know, it's pretty viable now. So that's good. The NES I also had a problem with because, as I said, I'm actually having 3 screen buffers, 2 for the internal Grime tile maps and 1 for the backup of the NES memory that needs to be written to the screen in the next screen refresh. And it's very slightly different to the tile map. It's got some extra data on the end, and that's why, as I said, I'd need to restructure the tile map 1 and tile map 2. I could flip them over and then tag some extra data onto the end, but even if I do that, I'm not sure there's still going to be enough memory in the NES's 2K, but I've got around that by reconfiguring my NES cartridge so it's got an extra 8K bank of memory built into the NES cartridge. Of course, it's a virtual NES cartridge, it's just a ROM file, but I had to tell the emulator via that header, oh well, actually this system's got extra memory, and then turn that extra memory on. Now that's got it working, but I kind of cheated a little bit there, you know. Really, I could optimize my game to use less memory, you know, but I'm in a rush here, very tight time constraints, so, you know, when it's on an emulator anyway, it doesn't really matter. So we're going to use that extra 8K of memory. We're not going to use all of it, we're going to use about 2K of it, but I've now got my approximately 1.5K that Grime Z80 needs, and I've also got the 1K that the screen buffer needs, and I don't need to do any major reprogramming. So that's quite nice. That's got me out of a hole there. So anyway, how did I do the Grime 6502 title screen? Well, I mentioned this on the Grime Z80, but I'll just tell you again in case you've not watched that. So I actually drew it with my sprite editor here. So this is the logo. Very nice. Well, I actually used Krypto as well a little bit. But then when you save using these save options, you'll notice it saves text files, TXT. And that's because the files are actually essentially CSV files. So this is actually the Grime 6502 logo here as it appears in the save file. All I did is I copy-pasted it from Notepad into here, added DBs to the start, and this is now the tile map numbers because the colours it was using are actually the matching tile numbers. So there we go. Nice, easy way of creating a quick logo there. So, well, what else has happened today? Well, as I say, a lot of restructuring, a bit of bug fixing and things, as I say, things like the NES, I had to rewrite all of the code there, centering the images on the various systems, fixing the tile map on the Apple II so that it didn't alternate colours every other vertical line. But the main thing that's gone on from the point of view of the functionality of the game itself is we're now using the proper tile map here. And we're using the proper clear screen routine. These are directly converted, and the repaint screen command here. Find tile as well, and render tile here. So just for a bit of fun, I think let's have a look at the do fill command in Grime Z80 and Grime 6502, and we'll see if we can notice the differences. So on the left here we've got Grime 6502, and on the right here we've got Grime Z80. And you can see because I'm using these sort of faked Z80 commands, everything looks kind of similar. So, unlike the Z80, the 6502, we can't really move things between different virtual registers. We only really have the accumulator. I'm having to load my virtual register L into the accumulator and then saving it to C, which is the equivalent of this, and then again for H and B here. When I'm backing up my virtual registers, I'm using this command called push pair, which is a macro I've created. So that's emulating the push command here. And the pull pair here, I'm not using the term pop on the 6502 because pop doesn't exist on the 6502. PLA is pull A and PHA is push A, so I'm using pull pair as the alternate to push pair. Now, when we get onto there, we do jump service routine, which is the equivalent to our call here, find tile. And then we're having to load in from the memory address HL, but we can't do that directly, so we have to use Y as well. That's an indirect reference, but I don't really want an indirect reference, so I'm setting Y to 0 to kind of nullify that indirection. you see, it should really use Y as an offset, but I don't want it to use Y as an offset, so I'm setting Y to 0. So we're just getting, we're just using the memory address stored in the virtual register HL here, and that's the equivalent of that command there, those two commands here. Then I want to add 768, so I'm using my virtual registers here, D and E. I have to set them separately, and this greater than and less than takes the top byte and the bottom byte of the value here, because it's a 2-byte value here. And so we're splitting that up and saving it in DE. And then I'm using my command add HOD here, which is again a fake Z80 function I've created. Now we want to compare the value we read in here from the first TileMap to the second one here and see if there's any changes. And we do that here as well. But whereas we can do a call if the value is non-zero here, we can't do a call on a condition here. We've got only this jump service routine command. We can't do jump service routine if non-zero or anything like that. So what we do is we actually skip over it if nothing's changed. So branch equals, BEQ is branch equals, which is the same as jump Z. So if the value we're comparing is the same as the value we had before, we skip over the jump to the render tile and we just carry on with our loop. Now we've got our pops here and we've got our pull pair, which is my emulated equivalent here. Then we increment our counters in exactly the same way here. We then do a compare with B here, again an emulated B. It's not a true register, it's a 0 page value. And here we're just comparing to our screen height. We have to put a hash here at the start of numerical comparisons. If I took this hash out, it would be comparing the memory location represented by screen height. That's something quite different with 6502, and it really plays me up when I switch between the two. And then branch carry clear is the equivalent of jump relative C here. And then RTS is the equivalent of return. So, I mean, the commands are quite different, and to be honest, in a lot of cases you find you have to use more commands with 6502, but the kind of payoff for that is that 6502 as a CPU is faster. It can do about twice as many commands in the same time as a Z80 CPU, so I guess you kind of balance it out. I have to say I do prefer Z80 a little bit, but yeah, 6502 is perfectly good. I don't sort of scream with pain as I'm using it. It's just like, oh, well, I have to do things differently today, so I don't find it really too bad. And these macros which I'm using here, these fake commands and this emulation of Z80, I think it's probably inefficient. I think there's probably better ways I could do it if I wasn't doing that. But in most cases, it makes it very easy for me to get my code converted. So let's have a look at the NES v2 VDP memory command. Now this has got some new functions with regards to forcing the memory to be dumped from the cache to the real VDP memory outside of the screen drawer. So let's have a look at that, because I'm using more native 6502 commands in there because I need the speed. So let's have a look. So I'm declaring two special variables here that are only used by this one function. So I'm loading them into the 0 page here, just after the Z page registers, which are my fake Z80 registers. And we've got the address of our buffer here, which is in the system memory somewhere. So the 6502 basically has three registers, A, X and Y. A is the accumulator and X and Y are kind of for indirect references and also for loops. So what we're doing here is we're loading Y with 0 because we're doing that same trick before where we want to use the data in the address at memory position SL, but we can't do that without using one of our references. So we're using Y here because we don't need it. X is going to be our loop counter, and using X as a loop counter is far better for speed than doing these things with my fake registers here. So at the moment I'm doing 128 bytes in a time because I found that would work within the refresh. So we're not refreshing the whole screen in one go. It seemed it was too slow to do that. And then what we're doing is we're loading the memory address we're going to write to next here. We're storing them to 2006, which is a memory map register of the VDP, and that tells it what memory we want to write to within the VDP. Of course, I'm going to cover all of this in my tutorials later, so this is just a brief introduction. So now we've told the VDP where we want to write memory to. We then read in the next byte from the cache of data, and then we store it to 2007, which is the port which sends the data to the VDP memory. So we do that. We then increase Y, which is changing the reference of the offset. So instead of reading from the first position in VDPSL, if Y goes up to 1, we will now read from the second position within the memory pointed to by that variable. So we're increasing y there, we're decreasing x, and the reason is it's very easy to compare if x reaches 0 because I can just use this branch not equals, whereas if I was increasing y and then checking if it got to 128, I'd have to be loading it into the accumulator. So I think overall this is the faster way, and it's a bit more convenient than having y at 128 and doing decreases, because I think that would cause some pretty major problems with my pointer to the memory here, because it always auto increments, and I'm pretty certain there's no way of auto decrementing. So I think this is the best way of doing things, but maybe I'm wrong. When we've finished, we need to then reset our scroll position, because any writes to the video memory of the NES resets our scroll position and messes everything up, which is why everything was constantly scrolling the other day. Now when we get to here, this is basically the same as my virtual inc.hl commands. So what we do is we load in the low value of the VDP word. We clear carry because there's no add command on the 6502. There's only an add with carry, so we don't want a carry, so we have to clear the carry. We add 128 because we've just processed 128 bytes. Store that back into L. Now we're also updating SL as well. Now L is the destination and SL is the source, but because they're both byte aligned, SL will be the same in both cases. Now what we do, if we get to this point, we see if we've got to 0. If we haven't, then we're finished, but if we have, then we need to increase H, because we've got to kind of carry it over if we've gone back to 0. Now at this point, we compare the memory destination and see if we're writing to 2400, which is the end of the TileMap. If we've got to this point, we've finished filling the entire VDP memory once, and what we need to do now is reset, but if we haven't, we just skip over the next bit. Here we're resetting our values here, so we set both the L's to 0, and then we set the high VDP destination to 220, so we're writing to hexadecimal 2000, which is the TileMap location, and then we set the high source value to the start of the VDP buffer, and we want the high byte, which is why we use that greater than command. So that's it basically. I mean, that took a lot of work because I was having some problems and it was my own stupidity to the great extent, but anyway, it's working now and it's pretty fast and it seems to work okay. The only unfortunate thing is it's using quite a lot of memory. Now what I could in theory do is, if you look here, I've got 2 tilemaps defined, and what I could do is I could use tilemap 1 as the VDP cache, because tilemap 1 is the visible one anyway. The problem with this is there's a few extra bytes at the end of the VDP memory in the NES. There's about 32 bytes, which are the color map, and if I were to do this, I would need to actually reposition tilemap 1 to be after tilemap 2, so that I could add those extra bytes, and that would mean reprogramming the code, and that would mean it doesn't match the Z80 code, which is what I really wanted. So for now, in all things considered, I'm sticking with it the way it is, using that extra cartridge RAM, but maybe I'll change my mind later. But to be honest, I'm not even sure there'll be enough memory even if I do that, because there's so little memory on the NES. So maybe if I wanted to not use that extra cartridge RAM, I need to rethink the way I do all of my screen calculations, because at the moment I'm relying on having 2 tile maps. Anyway, so there we go. So that's a little introduction to the sort of progress I've made today and the changes to the code, and I've gone into a little bit of detail there as well. So what's coming up tomorrow? Well, as I say, we've now got a working tile map, we've got 2 buffers, we've got graphics that work. So I think the thing to do next is to start getting some game coding going on. So I'm going to start using my joystick routines, which I've already hopefully pre-programmed for all these systems. I'm going to get the player on the screen moving around and maybe firing a bit, and who knows, maybe there'll be some Grime tomorrow. Anyway, I hope you'll join me for that. Hope you found today's video interesting. As I say, I will be doing proper lessons on 6502 in the future, but right now I can't spend too long on these videos because I need to get working on with the coding, so I've got something to show you tomorrow. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching and goodbye.